So thank you very much. We are now continuing with the Jesmos, and then the one Sunday of Lent that is represented in Lord Mystique. In the traditional calendar, or in the French tradition, during Lent, the organ falls silent, with the exception of a Lenten week, a rose-colored Sunday, and this one's called Laetare, after the introit. Yesterday, we began to venture down the route of what religious language is. And this is actually really important because what Tournemire is doing through art is a form of language. This isn't an aesthetic experience. It's not meant to be a feeling. It is a theological perlustration. Is almost like a sermon. It's trying to define without being a definition, and this goes into the very nature of what religious language is. So this week, actually, on the Quinquagesima Sunday, which is one of the Shrovetide Sundays, it has as its text the 1 Corinthians 13 passage, which is very famous. It's often said at weddings because it has the famous passage it says the famous passage that faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. But it really isn't about love. It is about epistemology. And let me put this down for a second. The text actually begins, "We see through the glass dimly." And that is an epistemological statement. I thought of things as a child, and now I'm getting older and see things for what they are. And that shapes what is being said in the rest of that passage. So faith, which is sort of a discipline of religion, and then hope, this sort of aspirational thing, and love. And love isn't what we term love. It is the connatural knowledge of existence outside the self. And the closest analogy we have to that actual knowledge of someone's existence outside the self is love. That is what religious language is. It draws upon life experiences to try to create a correlation to make a metaphysical idea. And I think as you go forward and go to church, you need to hear things not as morality tales or just a good story or something like that. You have to ask yourself, what is metaphysically being said? Not just how I live my life, but what is the reality beyond my life? And that is very controversial because a lot of people go to church and hear these things and think that this is a morality tale about how I'm going to live my life, where it's about existence itself. That's actually what religion is. And Tournemire was part of what was known as the Symbolist movement, which was an artistic movement that used artistic ideas to try to convey metaphysical concepts. And he was a student, he got to know a guy named Josephin Paladin, who was part of the Rosicrucian movement. And this was around the turn of the century, the last one. And he introduced Tournemire to world religions and how different religions perceive things. And just like when you learn a different language, you learn about your own. In learning about different religions, he saw his Catholic faith anew and understood it for what it was. And that shaped his music. So we have today one of the more, let's say, violent-tempered postludes. This one for Sexagesima. It is actually the story, well, it's the parable of the seed. And you will hear, as this postlude, the parable as it plays out. And to take the last part of the parable, the seed is the word of God. Those by the wayside are they that hear. Then cometh the devil and taketh away the word out of their hearts, lest they should believe and be saved. They on the rock are they which, when they hear, receive the word with joy. And these have no root, for which for a while they believe, and in time of temptation fall away. And that which fell among thorns are they which, when they have heard, go forth and are choked with cares and riches and pleasures of this life, and bring forth no fruit to perfection. But that on good ground are they which, in an honest and good heart, having heard the word, keep it and bring forth fruit with patience. So you will hear the twisting vines that are choking the seeds, and you will hear the birds swooping up and eating the seed, and you'll feel the parched earth and the stones that are killing the seed. And then it concludes with the idea of the seed bringing forth fruit with patience. So he in this is, again, we're getting into sort of an epistemological thing, that how you view faith, and this also does shape our lives. Our lives shape our epistemology. So if we go for a life of money, for example, it alters our perception of reality, and causes us to lose sight of existence outside the self. And it causes competition, which is not good, and it causes us to destroy people's lives in order for us to succeed. And that's an absolute state of unawareness of existence outside the self. So when we, the eye of the, getting a camel through the eye of the needle, that wasn't a gateway. Jesus actually did mean that. It was a common expression at that time, and money is the root of evil, and it destroys our epistemology. And this passage goes into that, and so anyway, so this is a metaphysical idea, and you're going to hear this played out through music. In the postlude for Quinquagesima, it plays off of the 1 Corinthians 13 passage. And most importantly, for now we see through a glass darkly. The postlude for this is known as verrière, which is in French for stained glass. So you're going to hear a chromatic image, or chromatic sort of chorale passage depicting us seeing darkly. And then it will have these joyful toccata passages depicting the light that's behind the stained glass. And light, of course, means revelation, or sort of an epistemological breakthrough to truth that is beyond. And is one of the most exuberant works in Organ Mystique. So it's going to contrast with the Sexagesima thing, which is kind of dark. Then we hit Laetare Sunday, which is the hymn actually deals with fasting and marching one's way through Lent. That particular Sunday, the text is the feeding of the 5,000. So it contrasts fasting and this miraculous feast. And in this work, you'll hear this miracle of the feeding of the 5,000, but it will recede back into nothingness because we still have to finish up Lent with Passion Tide and the crucifixion. And so it's a remarkable piece, and it has in it a very famous Lenten hymn. Tonight we'll end quietly, and so you'll probably have to watch for me to pop out of my hole before we do an applause. And then afterwards, for those who are visiting, I do a question and answer thing, or you can make comments about what you just heard. So again, Sexagesima, Quinquagesima, and Laetare Sunday. So first of all, any comments or questions? Yes? Oh, well, thank you. It's a very strange piece of music. I think the postlude for Sexagesima, it's great if you explain to people what's going on. It's disturbing to listen to. But that said, I also have to say that a lot of what Christianity espouses is not pleasant to listen to. We are now going through a sort of politically correct phase. It's sort of happened since Vatican II, where the less challenging things about religion are celebrated. It's more about warm and fuzzy feelings and sort of self-affirmation things. And sometimes doubting ourselves is really a little bit more important, because you don't grow unless you doubt about where you're coming from. I think some of what we need to talk about, and we'll deal with it as we go on, is what the God concept is. And when I use the God concept idea, I am affirming that there is what we call God. Thomas Aquinas would, when he would go through the proofs of the existence of God, he would end with, and this is what we call God. And that is not to say that he's talking about some mythical figure, but it's just trying to find a word to describe what we're talking about. God is an infinite concept. And the way we normally define things is by categorizing that concept. So the very word definition means to delineate a finitude. So these are the boundaries that we are putting on this idea and classifying it. And that's what actually has been done since the Enlightenment as far as how science sort of formulates things. I am pro-science, but this is how they get their head around their ideas. The problem is when you're talking about an infinite concept, if you are delineating a finitude, you're doing something totally opposite to that concept. So, you can't define God because you're making that concept finite when we're dealing with something that's infinite. And so religious language deals with the infinite. And the best way I can come up with to describe what the symbolic language of religion is when we went and studied calculus, we had, the teacher drew a curve on the blackboard. And the challenge was to mathematically define that curve. And you really can't do that mathematically. So what Leibniz and Newton came up with was calculus. And what you do is you take an infinitesimal, almost non-existent point on that curve and figure out what the slope is. And then if you get enough of those slopes, you get a concept of what that curve is like. It's not the curve in and of itself. It is a description of that curve. It points to the essence of that curve. And that is what religion does. And it's used through its semiotic language. And so when we say God is love, that is, we have a conception, a human conception of what love in our existence is. And the closest thing, when I was talking about love being the connatural knowledge of the existence outside the self, that if you believe in the existence of the creator and the created and how that is connected, the best way that we can get that around our head is the concept of love. We aren't saying that God loves you in the human sense. It is as love. because it's pointing to that essential reality. And it isn't the thing in itself. And sometimes we get, and this is what we call fundamentalism, where you get wrapped up in the symbol and forget the infinite concept that it's pointing to. And it's much harder and much more difficult to get to the infinite beyond the symbol, but that's the function. And the symbolist movement was one of the founding sort of fathers or of this. It's just like a grandchild of this person, but Arthur Schopenhauer. And he was, even though he was atheist, and part of that was the nihilism of his generation because he was raised during the Napoleonic Wars where, bliss wasn't in that dawn to be alive, and then you realize though Napoleon and the French Revolution was pretty bad. I mean, it killed more people in France than World War I killed in France, for example, and it destroyed Europe. And so Schopenhauer was raised in that time, and so his atheism was basically nihilism. Like I had all these ideals and they were just thrown in the gutter. But that said, he had some great metaphysical concepts. And one of his big premises was that art, because it doesn't use words to express itself, it is going to come closer to the definition of the thing in itself. Because once you use words, you are creating a definition. But if you take the words away and just have the idea, then that's coming closer to the metaphysical idea in itself. And he actually took that to another level. He used the visual arts, but then he went to music, which is even a better medium for conveying a metaphysical concept, because there isn't even a physical representation of that idea. When you listen to Tournemire, you're not going to leave here whistling a tune. You will just have churned through an idea, and then there won't be a melody. You will just have gone to the idea in and of itself. It's sort of like when you dream, you're churning through all these ideas and there's a plot, and then you wake up and you forget the plot, but you have the idea. You've churned through the ideas and you think, oh, I need to make eggs this morning or something like that, whatever your dream was about. And music, and the music of Tournemire, takes away idolatry, and it also leaves you with the idea in and of itself. And that's what I mean by sort of the metaphysical thing. And that's why his music is a step above even Bach, because Bach lived in a very safe time. It was as far as Christianity was concerned, and he could just think sola scriptura and just make all these connections and not be challenged. Whereas Tournemire grew up during the Third Republic, when Christianity itself was questioned, and monasteries were being thrown out of France and stuff like that. And when you are in a time where you're being challenged, you're going to intellectually rise to the challenge. And so that's why his music is so much deeper than even our venerated fifth evangelist, Bach, which is kind of heresy in the organ world, but it is actually very true. During the break, what was the COVID break, I learned some Bach pieces that Num Cum, I've completed the set of Num Cums. And I have to admit, they interested me on the level that a Sudoku puzzle interests me. It was great counterpoint. It was all correct, but it lacked the depth of this stuff. even though this music at times is very, very simple and austere and not as contrapuntally elaborate as these particular pieces I was working on. So anyway, so that is part of the Tournemire journey, and as we go on, we're going to have to talk about what the Third Republic was, and because Tournemire's life literally went from the Franco-Prussian War to World War II, which was another Franco-Prussian war. And so he spanned this Third Republic that was a very challenging time for the church, and it was a challenging time for him because he came of age just as the act of separation was happening. So that said, tomorrow we are celebrating Easter. So we are doing Easter Vigil, Easter Day. I have to say that is a mandatory thing to listen to because it is the first piece he wrote, and it's one of the most elaborate, the first piece of Lord Mystique. And then then we do Quasimodo Sunday afterwards, which is the, if you listen to the Pipe Dreams broadcast, that was like one of the first things on the Pipe Dreams broadcast that we went through. So it's neat to hear that piece live. Anyway, thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow.